In this episode of The Sacred Word, I want to speak to you about a great quote from George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, the great Greco-Armenian mystic. Now, this quote appears in P.D. Ouspensky's wonderful book, In Search of the Miraculous. Now, what this quote is about, it is about how the earth is in opposition to our own individual enlightenment. Basically, why the earth does not want us to evolve on an individual level and become enlightened. Why the earth doesn't want this for its own organic nature. Why it wants us just to play our organic processes as opposed to becoming enlightened. Now, this is an amazing quote. As I said, it appears in Ouspensky's In Search of the Miraculous. It also appears in my book, Effortless Living, shameless promotion, I know, shameless, but here it appears in my book as well. And I want to explore that today because it's an amazing quote. It's a little long, but we'll get into it. And this is what Gurdjieff stated.
The evolution of large masses of humanity is opposed to nature's purposes. The evolution of a certain small percentage may be in accord with nature's purposes. Man contains within him the possibility of evolution. But the evolution of humanity as a whole, that is, the development of these possibilities in all men, or in most of them, or even in a large number of them, is not necessary for the purposes of the earth, or of the planetary world in general, and it might, in fact, be injurious or fatal. But, at the same time, possibilities of evolution exist, and they may be developed in separate individuals with the help of appropriate knowledge and methods. Such development can take place only in the interests of the man himself against, so to speak, the interests and forces of the planetary world. The man must understand this. His evolution is necessary only to himself. No one else is interested in it. And no one is obliged or intends to help him. On the contrary, the forces which oppose the evolution of large masses of humanity also oppose the evolution of individual men. A man must outwit them, and one man can outwit them. Humanity cannot. You will understand later on that all of these obstacles are very useful to a man. If they did not exist, they would have to be created intentionally, because it is by overcoming obstacles that man develops those qualities he needs. This is the basis of the correct view of human evolution. There is no compulsory mechanical evolution. Evolution is the result of conscious struggle. Nature does not need this evolution. It does not want it and struggles against it. Evolution can be necessary only to man himself when he realizes his position, realizes the possibility of changing this position, realizes that he has powers that he does not use, riches that he does not see. And in the sense of gaining possession of these powers and riches, evolution is possible. But if all men, or most of them, realize this and desire to obtain what belongs to them by right of birth, evolution would again become impossible. What is possible for individual man is impossible for the masses.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack here. Now, just to be clear, in this quote, Gurdjieff does mention men and man, but he is referring to both men and women. So, we don't conflate that and don't make that into some sort of gender bias or turn it into a gender war. What Gurdjieff is saying, more importantly, is that the earth opposes our own individual evolution. It doesn't want the individual to become enlightened because it runs counter to the organic process of the planet. Now, this is Gurdjieff's view. Keep in mind, this is purely Gurdjieff's view. But this does throw a spanner in the works when people talk about collective spiritual evolution or spiritual awakening. You see a lot of this, and you hear about a lot of this in the New Age. There's going to be this spiritual awakening, collective spiritual awakening. We're all in a circle singing Kumbaya and having a great time. It's not realistic and it's not true. And Gurdjieff is kind of pointing to this. Gurdjieff is talking about that the planet, just the natural organic process of the planet, actually needs living organisms to maintain their existence and to live in harmony with the planet. And to do that, you need people who are, in some sense, less enlightened. And again, this is purely Gurdjieff's view. I would not say that everyone can't be enlightened. It's not that they can't. It's just that we're in a situation that not everyone is in the circumstance that they've come to realize that they even can be enlightened, or they don't even know what enlightenment is. They don't have the knowledge or the necessary means to reach that. But that's part of it. But Gurdjieff's actually saying that, like anything, like ants creating an anthill, they need obedient workers and so forth and so on to keep the civilization moving along. And he's sort of saying that in some sense for humanity itself, because his idea is that if we all were on the path of enlightenment, then human civilization would probably go into a slow process of decay because, things have to be done, and there needs to be things in society that actually need to happen to keep society moving along. Now, I guess you could say then, well, the situation is that Gurdjieff's pretty much saying that we need obedient workers and then we have enlightened people. He's not really saying that we need to. He's just saying that that's the way it's always been, and it seems that that's the way that the planetary process actually unfolds. Not all of us are fortunate enough to be born into a family of yogis. That's what truly would mean to be reborn in a fortuitous birth. To have good karma would be to be born into a yogic family, or a family dedicated to spirituality in some sense. But most of us aren't. Most of us are born into just ordinary middle class or poor families, and we deal with the cards as they've been dealt to us in this life. And if we're fortunate enough to come across some of the great Eastern traditions, then that's the great blessing in and of itself. And that's kind of what Gurdjieff is alluding to. But it is interesting, this quote, because in saying everything he said, there is some truth to it, as uncomfortable as it may feel for most of us. There is some truth to it, that if we are going to go on this path of enlightenment, this path of peace, and we're going to explore our own consciousness to liberate ourselves in this life, this is a solo endeavor. Now, most of us, when we embark on this solo adventure, this solo journey, a lot of people oppose it, and this is probably an aspect of what Gurdjieff was talking about as well, because the people who oppose it are just part of the planetary organic process. We feel this from I don't know about yourself, but I felt this from my family, and most people do feel it from their family and friends. When you go through some form of spiritual transformation and you dedicate your life to the path of liberation, there is a friction between your friends and people close to, namely your family. And this may relate to what Gurdjieff is saying. They are part of just the material world, the upkeep of the material world, and you are fortunate enough to break free of that, and to break free of that worldliness, and to aspire to reach the ultimate. Call that Brahman Tao or what have you. And this is the opportunity that we all have, actually, as he states in that, but it's not the way it is. There's a very small minority of people that find the path of liberation. As he said, nature is against your own evolution, and this is why when you begin to evolve and you begin to follow the path of liberation, there is that sense of conscious struggle that we all go through. We go through a struggle in our life, and that seems to not go away immediately, but there is a process within an evolution where there is that struggle. And anything in evolution actually goes through a process of struggle and then transformation. And that is what is happening. Nature itself is against you reaching the ultimate, because it just needs you to tend to its own needs, and rather than you focusing on yourself and reaching the ultimate, it wants you to tend to your own needs. Now, this kind of relates in some sense to yoga philosophy, because in yoga philosophy we have the Purusha, right? We have the Purusha, which is the pure awareness at the base of your nature. You could say that this is in some sense identical to Atman and Vedanta, this undifferentiated consciousness. This means that this pure awareness is beyond qualities. It doesn't have qualities, doesn't have character. It is your pure essence, your pure witnessing consciousness. And then there is Prakriti. Now, Prakriti is everything in nature, including your mind. So it's all of the mental activity, it's all of the physical world, all the energy and the mental phenomenon that is whirling around here in this universe. That is always trying to pull your Purusha into the Prakriti. It's trying to commingle the Purusha with the Prakriti. And it's only when you begin to separate through strict sadhana and realization that you can begin to separate the Purusha from the Prakriti, and you can see the Prakriti for what it is. And this is why it relates kind of to what Gurdjieff is saying, because Prakriti is nature's process, it's nature's unfolding, doing what it does. And it doesn't want you to realize Purusha. Though we could say in yoga philosophy, the purpose of Prakriti is actually there for you to realize Purusha. But in this sense, in Gurdjieff's sense, we're talking about how nature itself is just against that idea of you residing in the pure awareness and evolving. It's against that process. So your own individual liberation, your own individual evolution, nature doesn't want it. It doesn't want it. According to Gurdjieff, but you can see how this filters into certain different philosophies like yoga. And you could say it's a strict dualism, but we're looking at it just from a purely dualistic model. But in some sense, within duality, there is, and especially within yoga and other philosophies of the dualistic nature, there is a non-dual nature within them where your pure awareness is identified with something else, even though they are describing the world as something separate from Purusha. Longer conversation. But sticking to the point, nature doesn't want you to evolve. Now, all of the obstacles and all of the struggle that you experience when you go on the path of liberation is nature pushing back against your yearning to be free. Now, you remember nature itself includes your family and your friends and the situations and everything that you experience. This is all nature. This is all part of nature. Don't make a segregation between people and the environment, the natural world. It's all the natural world. That is nature pushing back against you, pushing back, saying, no, stay here with us in this worldliness, and let's just continue to, mindlessly move with the planet and the world and so forth and so on. No. If you are following the path of liberation, you need to be focused on your own meditation practice and your own knowledge and your own understanding of yourself and the world, and continue to press forward without succumbing to obstacles and struggles. Just understand that all struggle and obstacles make you stronger. They really make you stronger. So just move forward with that. Now, this message that Gurdjieff is talking about is not saying that the person, the individual, doesn't have a love for nature. That's completely wrong. The individual is trying to harmonize themselves with nature through the means of not using nature for its own benefit. It's just trying to harmonize with nature as it is. But he's saying that nature itself needs you to prolong certain processes within nature. In this sense, humanity. It needs you to prolong the process of humanity in the Earth's own evolution. You need to remember, in some sense, humanity and all the animals and everything else are only part of the planet's evolution. So on an individual level, if we want to evolve, we have to focus on ourselves and somewhat disengage from the planetary evolution, because that's going to happen regardless of what humanity does. We are not bigger than the planet. The planet's doing its own thing. We're a part of that. We are a part of that. But if we want to experience nirvana, moksha, kaivalya, then we have to bring the path of liberation back within ourselves, and we have to focus on the dissolution of this persona system, this jiva, that makes an artificial duality between you and everything else, and instead brings you back to the core nature, your non-dual nature, which allows you to move forward in your own evolution. Now, according to Gurdjieff, nature will oppose that. But that's just part of the process. And if you're fortunate enough to watch this and you believe in Gurdjieff's message, and you are following that path of liberation, you are trying to free yourself in this life, then that's a great blessing. Then you're on the way. And you don't have to be deterred by the way people treat you in the situations that are happening. You need to take solace in the fact that you are one of few who have discovered this path, and you are moving in a positive direction onto the complete liberation of yourself in this life. Shanti, shanti, shanti.